I stood at the back of the cathedral, watching the woman who shared my DNA adjust her silk veil. She looked like an angel, but I knew the rot underneath the lace. My name's Lily. I am 29 years old. My fiancé, the man I'd spent 7 years building a life with, was standing at the altar, waiting to promise her forever. Most people would scream. They'd tear the dress, slap the groom, and make a scene that would live on TikTok forever. Not me. I just leaned against the heavy oak door and smiled. I didn't want to stop this wedding. In fact, I'd spent the last 4 months making sure it happened. Because Clara didn't realize she wasn't stealing my future, she was inheriting my debt. 6 months ago, my life was a Pinterest board come to life. My name is Elena, and I was the successful one. I'm a senior forensic accountant. I find the money people try to hide. It's a job that requires patience, an eye for detail, and the ability to stay calm when everyone else is panicking. Then there was Mark. Mark was a rising star in real estate development. He was charming, handsome, and had that golden retriever energy that made everyone trust him instantly. We were the power couple, or so I thought. And then there was Clara, my younger sister. Clara was the artist. In our family, that was code for unemployed and perpetually supported by Elena. I paid her rent, I paid for her soul-searching trips to Bali. I even paid for the expensive DSLR camera she used for 2 weeks before deciding she was actually a poet. I loved her. She was my only sibling, and after our parents passed away in a car accident 5 years ago, I felt like I had to be her mother, her father, and her bank. "Elena, you're so lucky," she'd say, sipping wine I bought in my kitchen. "Mark is perfect. Why do you get the perfect life while I'm struggling?" I should have seen it then. The envy wasn't just a phase, it was her entire identity. The crack in the foundation. The betrayal didn't happen in a dark alley. It happened in the guest room of my own home. I had come home early from a business trip to surprise Mark for our anniversary. I walked into the house, heart pounding with excitement, carrying a vintage watch I'd saved 3 months to buy him. But the house was too quiet. Then I heard it. A laugh. High-pitched, melodic, and unmistakable. Clara. I walked toward the guest suite, my blood turning to ice. The door was cracked. I saw Mark's shirt on the floor, the one I'd ironed for him. I saw Clara's earrings on the nightstand. And then I saw them. I didn't scream. I didn't burst in. My forensic training took over. My brain went into data collection mode. I stepped back, went into the kitchen, and sat in the dark for 3 hours. When Mark finally came downstairs, glowing with a post-betrayal high, he saw me sitting there. He froze. "Elena, you're home early." "I am," I said, my voice steady. "I just realized I forgot something." "What?" "My self-respect. But don't worry, Mark, I found it." I didn't kick him out that night. That would have been too easy. Because that same night, while Mark was stammering excuses about momentary lapses and Clara being vulnerable, I went into our shared office and opened his private ledger. That's when I found the real betrayal. Mark wasn't just a cheater. He was a fraud. He had been running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme within his real estate firm. He was using investors' money, including the $200,000 inheritance our parents left for Clara that I had entrusted him to invest, to fund his golden boy lifestyle. He was nearly $2.2 million in the hole. The feds were circling. I could see the subpoenas in his deleted emails. He didn't love Clara. He needed a scapegoat. And Clara? She didn't love Mark. She just wanted what was mine. I spent that night on the floor of my bathroom, sobbing until my ribs ached. I had lost my fiancé, my sister, and my parents' legacy in a single afternoon. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I wanted to disappear. I thought about ending it all, just to stop the ringing in my ears. But then, I looked at the ledger again. If I stayed with Mark, as his legal wife, I would be tied to his debt. I would be an accomplice. If I broke up with him now and sued him, he'd go to jail. But the money, Clara's money, my money, was already gone. I needed a way out that left me clean, and left them with the bill. The next morning, I woke up a different person. The Elena who cared about family was dead. I walked into the kitchen where Mark was looking pathetic over a cup of coffee. "I forgive you," I said. He gasped. What? Elena, I don't deserve you. No, you don't. But I realized I can't live without you. And Clara? She's my sister. We're all human. I saw the relief wash over him, and then the spark of greed. He thought he'd gotten away with it. Over the next month, I became the most supportive person in the world. I encouraged Clara to spend more time at the house to heal our bond. I watched them steal glances behind my back. I watched them whisper. I pretended to be the oblivious, workaholic fool, but in the shadows, I was working. I began moving my personal assets into an offshore trust in my maiden name. I sold my jewelry and replaced it with high-quality fakes. I quietly resigned from my firm, telling them I was taking a sabbatical for my wedding, while actually securing a high-level job in Singapore. One night, I accidentally left a fake bank statement on the table. It showed a balance of $4 million in a wedding and future fund. I saw Clara find it. Her eyes nearly popped out of her head. A week later, she came to me, crying. Elena, I have to tell you something. I'm pregnant. It's Mark's. She wasn't pregnant. I'd seen the birth control in her purse. But she wanted that $4 million. She thought if she forced the issue, she'd step into my life, my house, and my bank account. I acted devastated. I wailed. I threw a vase, an inexpensive one I'd bought specifically for this moment. How could you? I screamed. Fine, take him, take it all. I can't look at either of you. Mark tried to apologize, but he was already looking at Clara like she was his get-out-of-jail-free card. See, Mark knew the feds were coming. He thought if he married Clara, who had no professional background and no assets, he could shift the ownership of his shell companies to her name before the collapse. He needed a fall guy. Clara thought she was winning a lottery. Mark thought he was winning a shield. Which brings us back to the cathedral. I watched them say, I do. I watched Mark kiss the woman who had betrayed her own blood for a life she didn't earn. As the priest pronounced them husband and wife, I felt a vibration in my pocket. A text from my contact at the SEC. Paperwork filed. Raid scheduled for 0900 Monday. I walked out of the church before the reception. I didn't need the cake. I went straight to the airport Monday morning, 9 a.m. Clara and Mark were at the airport, ready to leave for their all-expenses-paid honeymoon in the Maldives. A trip I had booked using Mark's last remaining credit line. They never made it to the gate. The FBI intercepted them at security. Because I had spent the last 4 months meticulously finding evidence of Mark's fraud and, this is the kicker, planting evidence that Clara was the mastermind. I had used her laptop, while she was busy sleeping with my fiancé, to send emails to offshore brokers. I had forged her signature on the shell company documents Mark so desperately wanted her to sign. Mark thought he was being clever by making her the owner. He didn't realize I had made her the lead architect. When the handcuffs clicked on Mark's wrists, he immediately tried to pin it on me. My ex-fiancée, Elena! She handled the books! He screamed. The lead agent just laughed. Mr. Vance, we've been tracking your wife's IP address for months. She's been very busy. And your ex-fiancée? She flagged these discrepancies to us months ago as a whistleblower. But here's the thing about being a forensic accountant. I don't just find the money. I know how to make it disappear. The $2.2 million Mark stole? It wasn't all gone. He had stashed $1.5 million in a rainy day account he thought I didn't know about. During the emotional breakdown phase of my plan, I didn't just cry. I hacked his recovery codes. I didn't steal the money, that would be illegal. Instead, I donated it. I donated every single cent of Mark's stolen money to a foundation for victims of white-collar crime, in Mark and Clara's names. Why? Because in the eyes of the court, a donation made right before an arrest looks like an admission of guilt. It looks like restitution attempted too late. It stripped them of their legal defense fund. They were broke, caught, and hated by the public. I'm writing this from a balcony in Singapore. The air is warm and the tea is perfect. Clara called me from jail once. She begged me for help. She told me she was my sister, that blood was thicker than water. You're right, Clara, I told her, my voice as cold as the ice in my drink. Blood is thicker than water. But you know what's thicker than blood? The prison bars you're sitting behind. Mark got 15 years. Clara got 7 as an accomplice. Because they were married, they couldn't even testify against each other effectively without incriminating themselves. They are locked in a legal embrace that will last a decade. They thought they were stealing my life. They didn't realize I was just handing them the keys to my trash can. I let her marry him because I knew that for people like them, happily ever after is the most brutal punishment of all. I didn't lose a fiancé. I gained a front row seat to the collapse of two empires.